Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Performance Cafe. It's great to be back with you. We've had 2 weeks of break. It's been a bit of a crazy time for us. Good crazy, not bad crazy. So that's a positive thing. And I might be telling you about some of the stuff that we've been up to in the next couple of weeks. So today I wanted us to talk. I'm sorry, I'm sort of holding this because I've got some notes here for us. Today I want to talk about the stories we tell ourselves, and we're going to talk about how that relates to accountability. So I love Brene Brown. I think she's absolutely fabulous. A lot of her work really resonates with me, and I've seen her work make a big difference in people's lives. And she sort of inspired some of this because one of the big learnings that I had from Brene Brown is on a Netflix special. I think it's The Call to Courage that they turned into a Netflix special. She and her husband Steve are both swimmers. They were athletes at school. And so they're at their holiday home. Their holiday home, if I remember correctly, is on the lake, and there's a little island into the lake. And they decide they're on holiday with the kids. They're going to swim to the island and back. It seems like it's a bit of a thing. Anyway, and they swim out, and while she's swimming, she's realizing that it's actually so great just to be able to be with him like this, because they sort of bonded, I think, over swimming, and that she feels so close to him. She really feels a bit reconnected because with busy lives and kids and everything happening, she has to travel a lot for work. She just felt like they'd really not had much contact before they went for the swim. Anyway, and they swim out, and as they get to the little island, they sort of get out of the water, and she says to him, Steve, and of course I'm paraphrasing it because I can't remember the exact words, but I just feel like so close to you right now. I feel so connected. It's just so beautiful. And he turns around and looks at her and he says, well, we better get back to the other side. And he just starts swimming. And there she stands. So she explains how she starts swimming again and starts wondering, is he going to divorce her? Is it because she's gained weight since he knew her at the age of 16? I mean, who wouldn't have, right? Is it, did she do something wrong? Whatever the case was, by the time they got out on the other side, she had worked herself entirely telling herself whatever the story was that she was building in her mind. And when he got out, when they got out of the water on the other side, she said to him, Steve, and he turned around and he took the earplugs out of his ears and he said, well, I'm going to be late to take the kids to the party. And that is why I wanted to talk today about the stories that we tell ourselves. And the reason for that is that I think when it comes to accountability and holding people accountable, we're also prone to telling those stories. So I think let's take a look at where these stories come from, firstly. So when we are young, we have to learn to adapt. As we know, humans are the weakest of all the mammals that get born. It takes us a couple of years to be able to do anything on our own. So from a young age, we are programmed to fit in, to do what gets us the attention we require, the food we require, the care we require, whatever it might be. So what happens is we become meaning makers, and that's a very big part of being human, is finding the meaning behind things. And so we start finding the meaning behind other people's actions. They think this is good, they think this is bad, and obviously good gets me better care, better nourishment, more contact, whatever, more connection, whatever that thing is that I'm looking for, right? That reaching back to Brene Brown's story of I feel so connected to you. So she was doing this thing, and there was this beautiful moment, and water got poured on it. And what did she do? She went, I am bad. I'm going to lose more connection. I'm going to lose more. I'm going to lose more. I'm going to lose more. So what happens is when we're little, we realize that if we scream and cry, we're going to get fed, or we're going to get picked up and hugged, or whatever the case may be. But then we go out into the adult world, into school and into the adult world, and we realize that actually it's very nuanced. If I have a cigarette with this bunch of friends, I'll get kicked out. If I have a cigarette with this bunch of friends, I'm part of the in-group. And so what happens is we understand that meaning making becomes incredibly nuanced and has a lot of depth to it. So we adjust. But we are always adjusting from within our own framework. Someone last week at a course said it so well. He said, it's not about thinking out the box. It's not about thinking in the box. It's understanding the box. And so I think we don't always understand that box, and that gets us into trouble. Now, a couple of ways that we get ourselves into this kind of trouble is that people will say things to us. For example, we need to talk, and nothing else. What happened to you when I said that? I mean, just hearing that one sentence, right? The moment we hear it, most of us sort of get like butterflies, good butterflies, bad butterflies, not sure. Something else is something that we do is where we say, you know, I've got this problem. I'm not sure how to deal with it. And people stop. And you're like, is the problem with me? Is the problem not with me? And immediately we go into our limbic brains and we start making meaning from a survival perspective. And survival will either make fright, flight, or fight. Right? And I find that very often what we do is when we don't prepare people properly for discussions, then we put them in that state so that when we then give them feedback, for example, with accountability, when we give them feedback, we go, so I've been thinking about this. I really think that you've been doing this poorly in the following way. Boom, 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 boom. Excellent. There's clarity, there's detail, there's data. Except we then ask them to give feedback in that very spot. They're not prepared. That is so unfair. Of course, they're going to go into their limbic system and go and try and fight or flight or whatever the case may be. But it doesn't set us up for a good interaction with them. So what happens is, the other one I've got written here, which is also great, sending someone a meeting request, no agenda, and a very vague topic. There's nothing that screams difficult conversation quite like that. And I think that we owe people more than that. We owe people more than just, sending them this thing, looping them into this meeting. They might not be able to say, they probably might not be able to say no. I mean, especially if you're the manager, it's not like they're going to just brush you off for no good reason. And actually, you're actually setting them up for failure because you're already starting them on the point of like, what's this about? I wonder what this is about. And there the little head goes and the story starts. Right. So what happens is, if we take a look at the biology of that, it's a case of when we go into our limbic system, that crocodile brain that we sometimes call it, because we're getting ready for flight, fright, or fight, our brain, our blood gets drawn away from our brain and our digestive systems, and it gets sent to our heart, lungs, arms, and legs. Because right then, we don't need to think, we just need to fight. And so what happens is, the moment you put someone in that position, you are actually setting them up for failure, because biologically, you want them to have a conversation when all of the brain, all of the blood is not in their brain, it's in their arms, their legs, and their hearts, and everything's like pumping, and they're going, trying to just go. Right. So we need to do things slightly differently. So I think what happens here is, it's a very human thing. A friend of mine, called out to Jan Hendrik, he and I had lunch yesterday, and we were talking about the future of large corporates. We were talking about the future of SMMEs in South Africa, that kind of thing. And one thing that we both agreed on was that the nice thing about being in a small business is that we can keep it human, not just within our businesses, but as entrepreneurs with each other. So in a business, if I had to take on the big boys, I'd like plan, I'd strategize, they'd be the enemy, whatever the case may be. But when he and I are working together, we look, can we collaborate? Can we cooperate? Or are we actually going to compete, but in a way that shows each of our unique offerings so that people understand that they choose the right offering, not the right person or the right business? And I think that's something that we must bring back into business, is humans speaking to humans. Because when I'm a human speaking to a human, I can be vulnerable and say, I've seen this behavior activity from you. This is how I perceive it. This is the meaning I made from it. Please, will you tell me your point of view so that we can see where we overlap, where we disagree, and how we can build that bridge, how we can meet each other and move this forward. And it's so interesting because there are so many books written about conflict in conversations. And it's normally between people that you are on the same team. It's me and my team. It's me and my peers. It's me and my board of directors. It's me and my wife, my husband, my spouse, my children, my partner, my business partner. These are the places where we can be the most human. And I think sometimes we miss the trick there. I was working with a cohort of leadership development participants earlier the week, and it never fails me. We in all of our development training that we do, we ask people to get 270 or 360 feedback depending where they are in the business. And the most amazing thing about it is how often people come back shocked, because either they got really good ratings and they didn't see that coming, or they've got poor ratings, and if they know who it came from, they're like, I did not expect this. Again, these are people who are volunteering to ask particular people for feedback. And in asking those people, there's a human connection already. Have the discussion. So I think that with accountability, I had it again earlier this week with one of my coaching clients who says, I keep on telling them the same thing over and over and over again. Why don't they just listen and do? And then I like to take out my favorite little example. I take an A4 piece of paper, I draw a 6 on it, and I put it in front of this person. And I go and stand across from them. And I say to them, what do you see? And they go, a 6. Obviously, it's 6, 6. And I say to them, no, it's a 9. Because it depends on our perspective. I'm standing on the other side. I'm seeing the 6 upside down. Why do I bring this up? I think because this is one of those typical cases where people say, oh, I'll never get through to this person. They always do something wrong. The moment that you never and always, please understand that there's something that you could change in order to change the never and the always from the positive to a negative. As in, they always get it. They always come and ask questions when they're not certain. They always listen. They always check their perceptions. So that's the one place we can see it. The other place we can see it, and I've actually sort of covered it already, is where people go, I've got a meeting with that manager or that team member. What they like, they never. It's going to be such a difficult discussion. Have you ever thought to sit down with that person over a cup of coffee, away from the office, which is why we have Performance Cafe, right? Away from the office, and just find out who's that person. Where are they coming from? And, it's so interesting. I told a group that I was working with earlier this week, I said to them, if you're not sure where someone's coming from, go to them and say to them, I'd like to understand more. Please tell me more. It's not a difficult question. Just tell me more. I feel here's a gap. I feel like we're not in step. I'd like to understand where you're coming from. Tell me more. And then listen to understand, not to answer. And then go away and think it through and come back and say, it was a valuable coffee. Let's talk more. I would like to understand more, because we always need time to process and think. The moment that we just shoot off our mouth, sometimes it very often is just coming from our perspective. There are places where it's great, like when you're mentoring, because, as a mentor, you're expected to have those answers. But very often, and this follows on from one of our earlier videos, asking questions is better than just telling. The other one that I've got here, I will never get that prime position. So why even bother? oh, so and so is appreciated more in the organization. That person will get the prime position. That prime project, I won't get it because so and so, or because so and so dislikes me. Ever tried reaching out to so and so and finding out why they dislike you? Actually, reality check, if they even dislike you, not everyone's cup of tea, but most of us have the ability to at least create a rudimentary relationship with other people, even if it's only a civil one. So go and be bold and go and ask that question. My other favorite is, I don't have a degree. I'm not part of that network, so I won't be included in the project. And I get this, and especially like in South Africa, we see a lot of that because the competition for work is fairly stiff. And because after COVID, we've also seen that a lot of people are actually sort of overqualified for their roles. So if you don't have a qualification, then you're sort of like, well, I don't get my foot in the door. And I think that's a very big reality. But the question is, where do people go that they don't need a qualification? Who's prepared to take you on as an intern so that you can work your way up? Where are you really good at that you might not figure as a career? Because you may have talents that are extraordinary that don't need a degree. But you see again how we've told ourselves that story. And unfortunately, in so many cases, society backs up these stories, right? You have to be in South Africa, preferably white male, to have gotten to make a life for yourself previously, especially before the democracy. It is preferable to be of a particular school, a particular university, in order to achieve anything. As women, often refer to the boys' club. That used to be quite a thing, that men used to have clubs that excluded women in order to promote, whatever the cause of the day was for men, and to help them support and promote each other. And then the last one is the most interesting thing of all of them, because I think this is a story that we so easily, also supported by society, but tell each other. I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. We've got all these isms. We often look into the either racism in South Africa. It's huge for us, right? But there's also all these sexism and ageism and whatever isms. And what happens is, instead of taking that and thinking, how can I rethink the story? We go, that's the reality. And I've seen it. It's a fact. You read it in the newspaper. Look at all those thought leaders. They all report the same stuff. They do. I'm not saying it's not real. But I'm saying is the way we think about it helps us to keep the box that we want to think outside of or inside. We keep the box intact. How do we destroy the box? So where do we go from this? I mean, I've spent close on 20 minutes probably talking about this. And I think the important thing is today, firstly, I wanted to create the awareness, because I think these stories that we tell ourselves, we accept to such an extent that we even accept the stories people we know and love tell themselves. So, for example, if I have a friend who says, oh, I'm not a white male and I want to get into finance, or whatever the case may be, I might support that story because I believe it to be true, because that's what society has been telling us. So I think the first thing is start being aware of the stories. And secondly, start challenging those stories, and not in a mean way. Just by saying, I decided this. What was the moment in my life that I decided this part of the story? Am I still the same person? Is the world still the same person? Go and tell other people your stories. It's a very interesting thing. So when we are thinking our stories, we're often in our right brain, where we are creative and where actually constructs are fairly abstract. The moment we have to actually tell our story to someone else, or even write it down, we have to move from the abstract to concrete because we've got to put it into words. And sometimes just when we tell the story, we realize, hold on, this sounds either silly or, oh, yes, I remember when that happened and it didn't feel great, but we can now review it. We can take a look at how much of this is influence from other people that aren't in our lives anymore. A very interesting topic for those of us that are at the age that both parents have maybe passed away. And then what they've taught us, which is fundamental to our upbringing, we can test, is that still of the world today? And does it still serve me? The other thing is we have people around us who not only care for us, but play a role that allows them a little bit of objectivity. Whether it's a coach, whether it is a mentor, whether it is, I mentioned it to someone else last night, why don't you go and ask a favorite lecturer at the university you attended, a favorite teacher, if you're young enough, a favorite teacher at your school, ask them what they think about your story so that you can reality check it and make sure that is the story real? And then you can decide for yourself, is the story worthwhile? Well, I hope that you are going to be able to use new and different stories to bring them into accountability conversations, both for yourself and with other people, and that you're going to find ways to change that story so that it works for you and that it stops playing to the social norm and gives you some new answers and new opportunities. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the stream. If you're looking for more, we record these and upload them after the fact as videos on YouTube and Facebook. And then related articles can be found on my website, Perform Forward. And the live streams themselves are normally held on my LinkedIn every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. SAST. That is GMT -2 for the rest of the world. And if you have any questions or suggestions for topics, or if you want to tell us what your story is, please do leave a comment below on either LinkedIn or on the platform of your choice, and we'll come back to you on those, and we can discuss some of those. And until then, I'll see you next Wednesday at the Performance Cafe.